The world is freaking out about Huawei, the Chinese telecom giant. Many countries are labeling it a national security risk. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. In December, at the US's request, Canada arrested the now infamous CFO of Huawei, Meng Wanzhou. Why? Well, according to China's ambassador to Canada, white supremacy. Okay, to be fair, the ambassador said that the white supremacy wasn't about arresting Meng, it was about arresting Meng and then complaining about the Chinese regime arresting two Canadians. Because if you respect the Canadian legal system but don't respect the Chinese legal system, that's definitely because you're a white supremacist. Or maybe it's because the Canadian legal system looks like this, while the Chinese legal system looks like this. Yeah, even the Chinese ambassador would rather be arrested under the Canadian legal system than the Chinese legal system. He just can't say that because he has to go back to China and he doesn't want to get arrested there. Now, what's been lost amid the diplomatic brouhaha is the reason the US asked Canada to extradite Meng Wanzhou in the first place. That Meng and Huawei had tricked banks into violating US sanctions on Iran by using shell companies owned by Huawei to secretly do business in Iran. So, when banks handled Huawei's financial transactions, they were accidentally doing business with Iran too. And after Meng's arrest, even more evidence has been found tying Huawei to these companies. Now, countries around the world have known for years about some of the sketchy dealings of Huawei, not the least of which are the shady connections to the Chinese Communist Party and potential national security concerns. But Huawei is also the world's largest telecommunications company, which makes closing the door on Huawei a little challenging when financial interests are on the line. So, here are how 8 different countries have dealt with Huawei. Number 8. India. After the arrest of Huawei's CFO, India's telecom export body requested a ban on Huawei products for government services, citing national security concerns. But India's telecom minister said the government would not look into a ban. I mean, you can't ban a company that could be building your country's 5G network, am I right? Huawei will be one of several companies participating in trials to secure permission to build India's 5G network. Don't worry, an Indian official said they would put all the necessary safeguards in place before allowing access to core networks. So, India's stance? Officials are concerned about Huawei, but they have no plans to block Huawei from government use or from their 5G network. Number 7. Germany. Germany's technology watchdog doesn't think Huawei is a threat. In fact, all 3 of Germany's major telecom companies use Huawei equipment. Later this year, Germany will also be auctioning off contracts to build its 5G network, and Huawei wants to play a major role. Nevertheless, some German officials have launched a last-ditch bid to convince the government to ban Huawei from the 5G market. But for now, the German government as a whole is happy to have Huawei everywhere. Number 6. France. When it comes to the war for 5G networks, France has not surrendered. According to Bloomberg, France is considering targeting Huawei as a security concern. France is also looking to build 5G networks, and it's moving to make parts of its telecoms infrastructure inaccessible to Huawei. France's largest telecoms operator, Orange, won't use Huawei equipment in its 5G network. Other major telecoms have said they'll look into similar moves, but as of now, France has no internal government ban on Huawei. Number 5. Japan. The nation that brought us Gundams has decided it doesn't need Huawei, at least as far as government contracts go, because of security risks. The new Japanese guidelines don't specifically mention Huawei, but are designed to prevent leaks of sensitive information. The guidelines cover purchases of personal computers, servers, and telecommunications equipment by the government and self-defense forces, or for concerns that viruses embedded in the equipment could cause systems to fail or could leak sensitive information, including military operations to China. Japan's telecom carriers are also saying no to Huawei. So Huawei is not getting a lot of love in Japan. Number 4. The United Kingdom. Huawei is also interested in the UK's 5G network, and a few days after Meng Wanzhou's arrest, Huawei agreed to address the British government's concerns about security. However, a major British telecom company, BT Group, said it won't use Huawei equipment for its core 5G network, and has also begun removing Huawei equipment from its 4G network. MI6, British intelligence, has singled out Huawei as a potential security risk, but officially, Huawei is not banned for government officials or 5G networks. Number 3. New Zealand. Just days before Meng's arrest, New Zealand banned Huawei from the nation's 5G network, citing significant national security risks. New Zealand's intelligence agency also rejected a proposal from Spark, one of the country's biggest telecom carriers, to use Huawei gear in its 5G network. Given that the Chinese regime is influencing New Zealand at every level of society, it's pretty impressive that New Zealand is coming out so strong against the use of Huawei. Number 2. Australia. Australia is also very concerned. Back in August, Australia banned Huawei and another major Chinese telecom company, ZTE, from building its 5G network. The initial statement targeted firms who are likely to be subject to extrajudicial directions from a foreign government, but did not mention Huawei or ZTE by name. I mean, it could be any company, am I right? Except that it's pretty obvious, and also, an Australian government official told Reuters that it was, in fact, targeted at Huawei and ZTE. So, Australia also coming out strong. Number 1. The United States. America has always been number 1, especially when it comes to raising concerns over Huawei. In fact, this whole case with Meng Wanzhou came out of investigations into Huawei leadership that the US government began way back in 2010. And during those investigations, FBI agents grew concerned that company officers were working on behalf of the Chinese government. Meanwhile, US lawmakers have been calling Huawei a security risk since at least 2012. And laws restricting Huawei equipment from government agencies began in 2013. Last year, 6 major US intelligence heads, including the FBI, CIA, and NSA, warned Americans against using products and services from Huawei. And the US has been pushing other countries to follow its lead. And more of Huawei's shady dealings are coming to light, like Poland arresting a Huawei executive for spying right before we recorded this episode. And more countries are beginning to pay attention. So, America, we're number 1 at blocking Huawei. So, what do you think about Huawei? Should it be banned or allowed in your country? And are you watching this on your Huawei phone? Leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to China Uncensored and turn that notification bell on so you get messages about new episodes. But before you go, now it's the time when I answer a question from a fan who makes China Uncensored possible by contributing through the crowdfunding website Patreon. William Adderholt asks, I was surprised to read in the newspapers that the Chinese government forcibly suppressed observations by Marxist student groups of Mao's December 26th birthday. What is the government's official position on Marxism and Mao, and what is their actual position? Aha, that's a good question. In case you don't know, November saw a pretty big crackdown on student Marxist groups in major cities throughout China. Now, officially, the Chinese Communist Party loves and venerates Marx and Mao, and Lenin, and all the other greats of communism, except for Stalin. It's because of the mustache. What is the party's actual position on Marxism? I would say that it's not that different from their official position. But the crackdown over the student Marxist groups isn't over who believes in communism more. It's over the fact that only the Chinese Communist Party is allowed to control communism in China. If you're going to protest in China, doing it in the name of Marxism won't protect you because you're organizing outside of the party state. In the end, communism was never about creating a better, more equal world. That was just a facade to convince the masses to overthrow the elite and ultimately give power to a small group of what turned out to be incredibly bad people. Every country that implemented communism quickly became a brutal authoritarian state. So remember, the only people in communist China who can talk about overthrowing the elite are the communist elite. Thanks for your question, William. And if you'd like to have a shot at getting your question answered on the show, sign up to become a member of the China Uncensored 50-cent Army by supporting the show with $1 or more per episode through crowdfunding website Patreon. Thanks for watching China Uncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.